Hello everybody, we're so excited to have you here with us on this Saturday. We are starting our live demonstrations with different artisans, different people that want to come share their knowledge, and today we're still kind of on that theme of National Hobby Month, but also this is a really special one because quilting was not originally a hobby. It was essential for pioneers. And so today we have Nancy De Vries here, and she's going to show us a little bit about log cabin patterns and pioneers. And I think one of the most interesting things is how long it would have taken them, because you have to take a lot of time to, grow the cotton, right? Or if you're going to use wool, shearing sheep, and it takes almost, if you think about it, if you get all that growing time, harvesting time, almost 8 months, if you're going to get something made out of cotton to grow. And wintertime, not only is it National Hobby Month, wintertime would have been a great time for pioneers. They had had all of their cotton spun and ready to produce and to make into quilts, which are an essential part of pioneer life. And I'll turn it over to Nancy.
Why, thank you, Danielle. I'd like to share with you a little bit about the history of it. The log cabin was something that the men would build, and with very, very few tools. And it was essential for shelter, and that back in those days, that's what the men did. Meanwhile, the women took care of the inside of the house, and the center of the home of a log cabin, which was only about 18 feet by 15 feet if they were pretty good at it, and a few tools like an axe, but the woman was the center of the home, and she had the fireplace going all the time, and for light, for heat, and for cooking. So this was her domain, and she would use whatever she had and save scraps of fabric. And when they first came to this country, things wore out eventually, and they replaced them. Now they started out with some 9 patches was a way to start quilting. If you're going to quilt, and they would use anything from what was velvets if they were a little bit more wealthy when they came here, ginghams, just anything that they had before they got to be all cotton, which was later. So basically a quilt is 3 parts, and we're just going to talk about the one part right now. They would put them together in patches. Okay, how did they get them square? Well, they weren't always square when they started out. They did it by hand. So these are the tools that would have been essential. First of all, you need a pair of scissors to cut up all the scraps into lengths or squares or whatever. You'd need some thread and a needle to sew it because they didn't have sewing machines then. So they did everything by hand. And some sort of a thimble, whether it was metal or whether it was a piece of leather, which was probably used more often because it was more available than leather. Needles were prized. Women had special boxes that they would keep them in, and for special things they would be, if they had a needle, that was just awesome. Special needle cases were important. So if they cut out all their pieces, whatever shape they were, they would do it by hand, and you can see here, this one is all done by hand. And they're pretty good job. There were no things that said, oh, you have to do it 1/4 of an inch from the edge. No, you just wanted to get it together.
Get it together.
Right, however you could. Big stitches, little stitches, and that's how it worked. Now, this is a sample of a log cabin. And the fireplace was the center. So traditionally, they would use red. This one, well, I'm not quite so traditional. So I just chose a different one just to show you how it would be. Besides red, they would use yellow because it was a light. So they weren't always red. So if you look at this one over here, this is red, and it's got the old-fashioned prints on it. So these were all prints and not plain. Where this one is modern, this has got batiks and more modern things. Okay, so you wanted to learn how to quilt. Simple, easy tools. These are a little bit more sophisticated than our forefathers would have had, sitting in a log cabin with just a light from the fireplace to do it. First of all, we need to have something to cut on. And this would replace the scissors. And this is a rotary cutter, easily available at any of the craft places around Georgetown. So check out your local people that do that. And a ruler. Instead of saving your strips forever, you'd be cutting them into different widths. It doesn't matter what width it is for this particular block. They can be skinny, they can be fat. You know, before it was utilitarian. Now it's more for show, like all the quilt festivals that we have over at the community center, and people enter quilts. This would still not be a quilt you would enter in anything, but it'd be fun to learn. You've got to start somewhere.
Is there significance in that one side's darker and one side's lighter?
By putting the lights and the darks together, you get certain different effects. It depends how you put them all together.
I didn't notice the diagonal pattern before.
So this is basics. I've got some strips. To make a quilt, you need three things. You need a top, and you need something in the middle. This happens to be batting, but the gals back in the early days, they would use old wool quilts. They would use a lot of even newspapers if they had papers from a book. I guess those Sears catalogs really worked good for a few things.
Nice little stuffing.
Yeah, but something, it's got to be 3 layers minimum. And so these are what I used. Cut up a few strips, different colors, and I did put the red traditional. I've got my batting in the middle and a backing. It all gets done at once. If you're going to quilt, you can do the piecing. This is the piecing. The quilting is going through all the layers. So there is a difference whether people call themselves quilters, but they're really piecers. And that's okay. And then there's other people, they send them out that have big, long arm machines that they can quilt them for you. So I guess we should call ourselves piecers instead of quilters. And then quilters, you know. But this is all done in one.
Okay.
So you're piecing and you're quilting at the same time. You can see that this has been recycled from other pieces too. Now, it doesn't matter if it's thick or thin. You're going to do 2 sides on the log cabin exactly the same, and then 2 sides with the other. So, normally we would have a sewing machine out here and we wouldn't do it by hand, but I'm just going to use pins to simulate and to show you. Okay, so you put it upside down and then you kind of eyeball it. This is not precise. Getting them the right width is.
More pioneer style.
Yes, this is a blend. So that's close. Then you would sew it down here with your machine, the width of a foot. Some people do it in exactly 1/4 inch. You know, whatever works for you. You just want to keep it together, and you're going to go and stitch with your machine, so have your machine close by. There we go. I think we've got that tacked down. And then after you sew it, you open it up. And I'm just going to stick this here to keep it back. We would do the same thing on this one. And from the same strip. It should probably be, it doesn't matter. Not really. Again, you would do it. And you could start it at the edge. And then you can fold this back to get a little bit more accurate. You can see this is not
right.
Exact. And that's okay, because when you stitch it down with your machine, I'm going to trim that off so we're not playing with the whole thing. There we go. That this is what is going to do it. So I lay it across and look and see, yeah, that looks square. And even though that other is hanging out there, it doesn't have to be exactly. And then you do it here. And you continue doing that all the way.
That makes sense.
So then it's all finished. After you've gone around and around and around, you're keeping the reds on one side, the blues on the other side. And the only thing you have to do then is put a binding on it to finish it. Now, these are just other strips that were more traditional, like this. But personally, I think I like the red.
I like the red and blue, yeah.
And that works. And it's something readily available that anybody who's just starting and wants to try it,
Yeah, you're right.
go for it.
These are pretty affordable, you know, opposed to buying
Fabric
in yards and
Yeah. Okay, what do I do with this? Well, you can put them all together, make a quilt. You can put them together and make a jacket. Here, you didn't see the back on this one. After this is all finished, as far as I want it to go, I can cut it down and square it up. And I could put it as a pocket on a tote bag or something, and it would, have all my accessories. But it's all done in one method where it's not pieced first. The piecing and the quilting is done together. And besides making pockets for totes and clothing, you can make quilts. Now this is another variation of the log cabin. This one is going to Children's Advocacy Center, and it's called Courthouse Steps. And it's reversible and a lot larger scale. So perhaps some child over there is going to enjoy this quilt. And it doesn't go we started with a rectangle and then did the two sides and then the two bottoms, two sides and the two ends. So it's just the same thing. Again, it's all finished except...
How long roughly does it take you to piece this?
Because they're so large, if I got them all, it doesn't take. In an afternoon, I showed a friend.
A little simpler with
yeah,
the larger.
A friend and I did them in an afternoon. It was just kind of fun, get together. Yeah. She needed to learn how, and sure, let's play. And you could have the same colors.
How does it work to make it reversible? Is it still just 3 layers, or?
Yes, it is, but you do each one separately and then join it the same way, but you're joining the underside also. So, hold on. So it would be a sandwich like this one with the batting in one part of it, and that's the under part. And then I would put this on here and this on here on the edge, and the batting would be here. And then I would flip them over after they're sewed on, so the batting is encased.
Makes sense.
You got it?
Yes.
Or if you're into fiber arts and just being decorative, you could do it out of, this one is done out of silk.
Oh,
so it makes an art piece. You can frame it yourself or go over and get it framed. Again, the traditional red and then the other colors, the darks and the light colors of silk. And then, if you're fortunate to have one of these wonderful embroidery machines, you don't have to do any cutting or anything. All you have to do is program it into the machine, lay it down, and watch it stitch. You do have to lay the colors on, but this is the last part. And this I decided would be a coaster, but I wanted you to see that whether you have simple thread and needles all the way up to a fancy embroidery machine that does it all in one step. But that was all pieced, and then I put the back on.
Right.
So.
And it's a great way to show, like, from essential quilts needing it to live life to how you can have it as an art piece in your home.
There you go. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope you've learned a little bit about the log cabin and the log cabin quilts.
Yes, thank you guys for joining. We'll see you next Saturday with another program.